and get this clear. So it's not sure there is a second manuscript at all. It may just be a copy of the first one, a transcript. But I'm also trying to. I'm also curious about this.
Yeah, please let me know if I would be of some help in getting the.
Yes, thank you.
Well, that's great. Unfortunately, time is very little, so I think thank you very much, Ilya. I think we just move on to Christoph. Please, Christoph, if you could briefly introduce the main point.
Yes, but I shall summarize. This is a paper about the Vedanta connection of the Nirukta tradition. Of course, the word Vedanta is touchy because for some people it's difficult to use Vedanta, the word Vedanta for these post-Upanishadic and pre-systematic Vedanta speculation. Anyway, as highlighted by you and Kawamura in your recent work, according to Yaska, the plurality of deities can be first reduced to the three main deities, and these in turn, I quote you, can be reduced to the one fundamental deity, Agni, the terrestrial fire, the great self. So we can see that Yaska would side with the knowers of the self, the Atmavits, as says Durga in his gloss, following whom all names ultimately refer to the one existing deity, the great self. And this concept of the ultimate Eka or Mahan Atman, as it is said, is theologically used by Yaska only twice in two paragraphs of the 7th chapter. However, as I try to show in my paper, in commenting Vedic mantra, Yaska used also no less than 4 times in different chapters the Adi Daivatam Adhyatmam double level of exegesis found in the early Upanishad. So what is this kind of exegesis? It's a peculiar manner of displaying 2 parallel levels of allegorical interpretation in commenting on Vedic mantra. The first one relating it to the supreme deity, the second one to the individual or supreme self, Devatam or Atman. In the case of Yaska, the formula is each time the same. The first level of exegesis is concluded by iti adi daivatam, directly followed by ata diatman, introducing the second level of exegesis, itself concluded by iti atmagatim achaste. So this double level of exegesis is really interesting because, as I said, it is found already used in the earliest Upanishad, like the Birad Aranyaka and the Chandogya. And later on, we find also this double level of exegesis used by Shankara, for instance, in various work attributed to him, but also in the Bhashya to the Brahma Sutra. So that's the first element which make a connection between the Yaska and the Vedanta or pre-Vedanta tradition. But what is more important is that there is really a special parishishta, the second one, declaring itself to constitute an Atma Jijnasa, an inquiry about the Atman, and which is entirely devoted to the Mahan Atman, starting with his, maybe I could say a few more words on this parishishta. In the introduction of this parishishta, the author declares, it's a follower of Yaska, clearly, with quotation of illustrative mantra, that after the explanation of the divinity and the requisite of the sacrifice, he will now explain the higher path, the higher way, Urdhva Margagatim, the one concerning the Mahan Atman. And his work, this Parishishta, purport to be an inquiry about the Atman, as I said, Atma Jijnasa, and this is repeated in the conclusion at the very end of the Parishishta. So I shall not go into the detail of the two parts of this Parishishta. There is one which is more theoretical, giving the various names of the Mahanatman, of course, starting with the word Brahman, and by describing the cosmogonic threefoldness of this Atman, corresponding to the division into the three guna, and also which through the generation of the five bhuta and corresponding five senses, and the reverse resorption generating manas, vidya, manatman, create the perpetual cycle of days and night. And so they are described also the conception of the human being, and so and so. And the second part of this Parishishta is a commentary on a series of Vedic mantra interpreted as telling this Mahan Atman, and again the Adidaivatam, Adi-Atman double level of exegesis is extensively used in the commentary of this mantra. So, in conclusion, therefore, it's not perfectly clear whether Yaska himself fully endorsed what I would call the early Vedantic view in the broad sense of the term. I think about the nominalistic monism as said, as Visigali Paolo, sorry, that was in my written text, as Paolo has said himself, we can call about a nominalist or nominalistic monism for Yaska. So if we can not talk for Yaska about really a Vedantic view, but at least for the followers of Yaska, it's more clear, at least for the author of the Parishishta, the second Parishishta, and it's even more the case for the author of the Nirukta Shloka Vartika, but I didn't deal with him in my draft, so I shall not go more deeply into this also interesting text, which is it has not been said, but Nirukta Shloka Vartika, it's a commentary in Shloka on the Nirukta, which is even longer than Kumaralabhata Shloka Vartika, for instance. But what is interesting, as Ilya said, the author of the Nirukta Shloka Vartika, in his introductory Mangala, he already equates the Agni Vayu Surya Triad to the Jyotir Ekam Trida Stitam, that means the Mahanatman, we could say it. And he further says every opportunity offered by his source text to engage in lengthy philosophical discussion on ontological and or epistemological topics according to a final Advaita Vedanta view. So these two texts, the Nirukta second Parishishta and the Nirukta Shloka Vartika, these testify clearly for a special connection between Vedanta and Nirvachana tradition, a special connection which I think deserves to be more deeply explored than it has been previously made. That's what I wanted to say briefly.
Well, thank you very much. I think it's absolutely fascinating. So also, it seems to me there's been the tendency, perhaps like among Western scholars in particular, of not paying enough attention to the Parishishta sections. Perhaps because, people tend to say, oh, they're kind of later, they're not Yaska. But they do contain lots of fascinating material. As you show in your paper, they really help. They constitute perhaps a kind of bridge between Yaska chapter 7 and these later Vedanta ideas. And I do have some comments, of course, but I think while reading your paper together with like Amruta's paper, one thing that struck me immediately, it's like the connection that you both kind of pick up on this very important item, namely these like multiple level kind of exegesis that Yaskas uses quite a bit, which is inherited from the Upanishads. So definitely there is a strong link between your both contribution in that respect. Is there anyone would like to say?
Maybe I could also highlight something that is relevant to your paper also, Paolo. When you say that at one place, Yaska shows a kind of slightly Mimamsa-like idea that the Veda is eternal. Interestingly, in the Nirukta Samuchaya also, I didn't mention this in my article, but it is there in the text, and I had to think about it for my thesis. At the start of the second kalpa, the text has 4 kalpas. At the start of the second one, he under the first mantra, Varajuchi discusses a little bit of theory about what is a devata, devata tattvam. So he says there are, of course, various opinions. He briefly says the same things as Nirukta, that some people say the devatas are human-like, others say they are just light. He doesn't elaborate, but his conclusion is very interesting. Sarvatha mantrakshara vyatiriktam devatayah pramanam nasti iti siddhanta. So the siddhanta, the point of view, the conclusion, or what Nairuktas think, is that there is, apart from the syllables of the mantra, mantrakshara, there is no pramana, no evidence for the existence of a devata. And to me, this sounds very much like Mimamsa.
That's really interesting. The status of deity as it is described. Absolutely.
What I find a pity is that he says only this sentence. He doesn't give any citation or further information that could help us to know his relation with Mimamsa or something. But this is also there in the Nirukta Samuchaya. That's his conclusion.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been wondering while reading your contribution, also in connection with like Yaskas etymology, is if it's possible, as I would not like to overemphasize it, but to kind of see how etymology plays into this different way of layering Yaskas interpretation. So if it might be possible to say that different interpretation are kind of reflected by different etymological interpretations, or rather perhaps the difference between like an ordinary meaning assigned to a certain term, it's kind of that term denotes a commonly conceptualized kind of deity. But then if you're an etymologist and you possess of the superior knowledge, that enables you to see that actually that name does not stand for a deity, but only for an attribute of the Mahan Atman. So, in a way, etymological knowledge is directly connected with the theological knowledge, which is represented as being superior. This is just an idea that, reading your contribution kind of made me through. I don't know what you make of that, if it's bunkers or... But that's there would be so much more to talk about. Maybe let's try that. Maybe we move on to Amruta, and because Amruta, in your paper you also talk about these different layers of interpretation, so then we might also perhaps link back later with Christoph's point. Please, Amruta.
Yes. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Thanks, Paulo. I will read out a brief summary of my paper. And I'm going to express my views about interpretation of the word Artha in Arthapatyam, Nirukta 7.1. So at the beginning of the 7th Adhyaya, Yaska has defined who is a deity and what is a mantra. he states, Yat kamaha rushihi yasyam devatayam arthapatyam icchan stutim prayunte tad devatah saha mantraha bhavati. Here, in the expression Devatayam Arthapatyam, the word Artha has been translated as object by Durga and Skanda Maheshwara. Both the commentators have interpreted the word Arthapati in its usual sense, that is, Aishwarya Dehe Patihi. Interpreting Artha only in the sense of object or wealth is a naive way of interpretation. That's what I think. Too simple to be intended by the author. In case of Durga, it is not the first case that he has ignored the context and interpreted the word Artha differently. Mehendale has shown one such example in one of his articles. The word Artha has many meanings: a place to go, a goal, purpose, substance, property, prayojana, subject matter, and meaning. Yaska believes that the Vedic mantras can be interpreted in three ways: Adhyadnya, Adhidaivata, and Adhyatma. When he defines what a mantra is and who is Devata, that definition should be contextualized as per his methods of Vedic interpretation. Opulence is the first layer of the meaning of the word Artha, and it represents the Adhyadnya aspect of the Arthapatyam. The second layer gives us idea that Devatayam Arthapatyam is actually Devata Vishayakam Arthapatyam, that is, knowledge of deity. While stating the importance of understanding the meaning of the mantras, Yaska says, Yadnya Daivate Pushpa Phale, Devatadhyatmeva. Sacrifice, so also the mantras, are the means towards the knowledge of the deity, and the knowledge of deity bears the fruit of knowing the Atman. Thus, Devatayam Arthapatyam can be interpreted as Devata Vishayakam Arthapatyam, that is, knowledge of the deity, and in turn, knowledge of the Atman. In this context, we get some help from Shaunaka's Bruhad Devata. He mentions Yaska while stating his views about derivation of nouns. Shaunaka says, Yaska stated that nouns are derived from four: Ashis, Arthavairupya, Vak, and Karman. This view about derivation of nouns ascribed to Yaska is not traceable in the Nirukta. In my opinion, the discussion in the Bruhad Devata is not about deriving nouns as it seems, but Shaunaka meant here various ways of Vedic interpretation. I have tried to prove this point in my paper. I skip the details here and come to Yaska quickly. According to Shaunaka, Yaska explains the Vedic mantras in four different ways: Ashis, Arthavairupya, Vak, and Karman, where Ashis means Adhidaivata aspect of the mantra. Arthavairupya means its various cryptic or mystic meanings. Vak is the literal meaning or Vachyartha, and Karman means expounding the mantras from ritualistic point of view. So, to conclude, we can say that the commentators of Nirukta have taken the word Artha in its literal sense, that too limiting it to wealth only. For Yaska, the word indicates a greater or deeper meaning. The statement Yadnya Daivate Pushpaphale, etc. indicates Yaska's views about the role of the Vedic deities. This suggests deeper meanings of the expression Devatayam Arthapatyam. Shaunaka's intriguing statement comes as additional evidence for this. Thus, to put it in the style of Yaska, Artha in Devatayam Arthapatyam means, firstly, Adhiyadne, wealth, Swarga, etc. Secondly, knowledge of a deity or its powers, Ityadhidaivate. And thirdly, knowledge of Atman through deity, Ityadhyatmam, Itisham. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think it's another really fascinating paper. I think it's interesting. I mean, it's fascinating the way that you kind of use Yaska's own multi-level interpretation style to then read a different level into the interpretation of artha. And I think definitely artha, understand it in that sense only as wealth of opulence, it does sound a bit reductive indeed. I think it's also fascinating. I was thinking about that. So right now, really, when you spoke, so there are, I think in Durga, there are a few passages in which Durga, he talks about the meanings of the Veda, and he emphasizes that the Vedas, they have a huge number of meanings. And that seems to be connected also perhaps sometimes with the multiple etymologies that Yaska gives for one word. So there is this idea that the meaning of the Veda cannot be reduced to just, one slot. So in a way also your attempt to find out its different levels of artha seems also to be consistent with the Durga's own interpretation of what the Vedas should look like. So that's, I think it's a very interesting point. I wanted to ask you about these different levels of meaning. What do you think in terms of, would you agree with Christoph that it's possible to understand them as suggesting some kind of Vedantic attitude?
Yes, certainly. I mean, we can find here and there at many places Yaska talking about that level or about adhyatmic meaning of the mantras. So definitely.
But if I can say something, I would react to your very interesting paper that the presentation that the full presentation that I watched yesterday for the last time, and of course the problem here is this statement of Shonaka, which is very strange, because yes, of course, it's possible to try to find in Yaska what could correspond to what Shonaka said, but it's not so obvious, I would say. And the second thing I would say is that the double level I talk about, and you talk about a third level, but the problem is that these multi-level are explicitly used very very few time. In fact, only I think for the Adhyatman Adhidaivatam in Yaska himself, it's only 4 times that we found that, and the additional Adhyajñam level is explicitly used, I think, only once, I think, in the whole Nirukta. So I'm not so sure that that these 3 levels would correspond to the 4 4 parts referred to by Shonaka. Anyway, it's an interesting path of understanding, but I'm not sure that it is fully confirmed, I would say, in the text of Yaska. It's a
Yeah,
please, Amruta.
Shaunaka has used the word karman, and so scholars thought that it is about deriving nouns from the verb.
Hello, am I audible? Can I ask a question?
Yeah, yes, please.
Yes, of course.
However, I cannot hear.
Oh, can you hear us? Mao, can you hear us? Maybe.
I think she cannot.
Is it possible to send? Maybe should Michelle, are you there? Could you perhaps help us out and contact Mao?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I was talking about the word karman. I think the word karman refers not to the verb or action, but it refers to yajna karma.
Yes, yes, of course. That's certainly.
So in that context, I think Shaunaka is referring to Vedic interpretation and not the ways of Vedic interpretation, and not of deriving nouns from verbs or other possibilities.
I think so. Let me take this opportunity also to say that I think all these ideas that we're discussing here, if you are interested, and it seems that you're interested, I think that would be absolutely worth pursuing them further in a publication, a joint publication. So, in the context of writing the paper, then I hope we'll really be able to also share the papers, maybe at two different stages of development. So, like a kind of a draft first, and then maybe like a final kind of paper, and it would be great just to to build on this interaction. But I think Mao is back. Can you hear us? But I think Mao is back. Can you hear us?
Yes,
Oh, that's
I was
great.
to ask something.
Please.
Yes,
Oh, that's
I
great.
was to ask something. But the internet is, I think there is some problem with the connection. I think there is some problem with the connection.
Mao, would it be perhaps possible to ask your question in the
She
chat
left.
then?
She left again.
Okay, hopefully she's gonna be back soon, so that we'll be able to hear her presentation.
Yes, she's there.
She's back. Hello, Mao.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Can we hear you very well?
Hello.
Hello. Can we hear you very well?
I was to ask.
Hello. Can we hear you very well?
Amrita. I was to ask.
Hello. Can we hear you very well?
There is a severe problem with.
Mao, can you type in the question in the presenter chat for us, please? It seems like Mao is having a little bit of difficulty with the internet. I'll try to assist bringing her back on for her presentation.
Thank you. That would be wonderful. Thank you very much, Michelle.